My name is Eric, and I ended up in prison because of my wife, Nicole. We had been married for several years, but lately our relationship had become strained. It all started when I began communicating extensively with my friend Amber about her business plans. She wanted to open her own fitness courses for middle-aged women and asked for my help since I used to work as a fitness trainer. Nicole immediately became wary. At first, she simply warned me not to get too close to Amber. But then, seeing that I continued to communicate with her, she began openly accusing me of cheating. We constantly had scandals on this ground, although I explained to her time and again that Amber and I had a strictly business relationship. One morning, while getting ready for work, I discovered that one of my car tires was flat. I got angry because I was already late and asked Nicole to call our mutual friend Marcus to come and put on the spare tire. I myself ran to work, deciding to deal with the car in the evening. Returning home late at night, I found Nicole in a rage. She attacked me with accusations, claiming that her friend had called and said she saw Amber and me together. According to her, we were behaving not just as friends, but much closer. I tried to explain everything, saying that her friend must have misunderstood everything and imagined something that wasn't there. But Nicole didn't even want to listen to me. She launched into an angry tirade, calling me names. I freaked out. We hadn't argued for so long that I had gotten out of the habit of her jealous fits. Grabbing the keys, I ran out of the house, not knowing where I was going. I just wanted to be alone and calm down. I started the car and, without looking, sped off. Driving out onto the road, I gradually began to come to my senses. And suddenly I remembered how Nicole had said in the morning that Marcus had come and changed the tire. Strangely, the car was behaving somewhat unusually, especially the brakes were responding with a delay, but I didn't attach much importance to it. Ahead, the traffic light was red, but I was driving at a decent speed, somewhere around 90 kilometers per h, and simply didn't have time to brake. I tried to switch to the handbrake, but it was too late. At full speed, I crashed into a Fiat standing in front. From the heavy impact, it was thrown into the oncoming lane, where another car immediately crashed into it. Fortunately, there were no fatalities, but the child sitting in the back was badly cut on the head and was covered in blood. You can't imagine what happened next. Screaming, crying, accusations. The Fiat driver threatened to put me in jail. Police, ambulances, investigations. They wanted to hang an involuntary manslaughter charge on me. After all, if that child had died, I would have faced a serious sentence. In the end, the case ended up in court. My lawyer tried to defend me, but all the evidence was against me. As a result, I got 4 years in prison. Nicole suddenly changed her anger to mercy. She forgot all our quarrels and tried to help me. Then, however, she gave up herself, and I sat there in a daze, not believing that this was happening to me. I hoped that I would wake up at any moment and it would all turn out to be just a nightmare. The first year in prison was hell. I couldn't find a place for myself. I couldn't communicate with anyone. Only letters and rare visits from Nicole helped me not to go crazy. But then they began to come less and less often. I was afraid to think what had happened. Maybe she met someone else, or just got tired of waiting. During the second year of my incarceration, Nicole began sending me increasingly short and dry letters. There was no question of visits at all. Several times she wrote that it was very hard for her, that she was not sure if she could continue to wait for me. I tried to support her, wrote that I loved her, and that we would definitely be together. But one day a letter came where she reported that she had met someone else, that she wants to start a new life without the burden of the past, and that I should let her go. I was crushed. It seemed to me that the whole world had collapsed. I didn't even find the strength to answer her letter. I just accepted it and took it for granted. At that time, I didn't know that this was just the beginning of my misadventures. A couple of months later, I was informed that I was being released on parole for good behavior. Imagine my surprise when I found out that during my absence, Nicole had managed to sell our house. Allegedly, she couldn't pay the mortgage. Part of the money went to my parents, but she herself never showed up to meet me. I had to live with my relatives for a while, sitting on their neck while I was looking for a new job. And then Nicole appeared on the horizon again. Having learned that I was free, she asked for a meeting. She said she wanted to talk. I arrived without much enthusiasm, not knowing what to expect. She threw herself at me with hugs and tears, began to apologize. She swore that she still loved me and wanted to start everything from scratch. She said something about breaking up with Marcus, but I was already half listening to her. It's not that I forgave her, but I was too exhausted and tired to argue, and I didn't really have a choice. There was nowhere to go. So I just nodded and let her hug me. And in my soul, some bad premonition was growing. And it didn't deceive me. A couple of weeks later, my old friend Carl called me. We hadn't spoken since my arrest, and his call came as a complete surprise to me. And what he said made me almost lose the power of speech. It turned out that Nicole had started cheating on me even before I went to prison. Carl had all the evidence, photos, screenshots of correspondence. He even showed me messages where Nicole asks him not to tell me about it. I was furious. I paced the room from corner to corner and couldn't find a place for myself. How could she? How did I even live with her all these years and not notice anything? But that wasn't all. In the correspondence, Nicole mentioned that the accident that landed me behind bars was not an accident. That she and Marcus had planned it all together. Do you understand? I was set up. My best friend and beloved wife ruined my life to be together. This thought drove me crazy. I was so angry that I couldn't even think straight. But one thing I knew for sure, they would pay for it. I began to remember that fateful day, how I argued with Nicole, how she said that Marcus had come to change my tire, and the accident right after that. Yes, most likely he just ruined my brakes, the damn traitor. Then I acted quickly before I could change my mind. I called Nicole and said we needed to talk. I suggested meeting at my place. I had just rented an apartment. Secretly from her, I turned on the voice recorder and left it on the coffee table. Such things are not done without proof. Nicole rushed over immediately, even earlier than the appointed time. She looked worried and a little scared. Did she guess that I knew everything? However, I didn't care about that anymore. I only wanted one thing, the truth. Nicole was sitting across from me, nervously fiddling with her purse in her hands. I could see that she felt uncomfortable, but I didn't care. I wanted to hear a confession from her so that there would be no more doubts. "Why did you call me?" she asked quietly, not raising her eyes. "I thought we had already decided everything." "No, not everything," I said through gritted teeth. "There's something I need to know, and I want to hear it from you." "What are you talking about?" Nicole finally looked at me, and fear flashed in her eyes. "I know about your affair," I blurted out. "I know you were sleeping with Marcus behind my back, and that you two staged the accident to get rid of me." A heavy silence hung in the air. Nicole's face reflected a whole range of emotions, from surprise to horror. She opened her mouth, trying to say something, but couldn't make a sound. "Well, nothing to say?" I smirked. "Cat got your tongue, or are you thinking of how to lie more convincingly?" "Eric, listen," she began in a trembling voice. "It's not what you think. Yes, Marcus and I had an affair, but—" "So you don't deny it?" I interrupted her. "Well, that's something, but that's not all. I want to know the details. When did it start? How dare you betray me?" Tears flowed down Nicole's cheeks. She sobbed, smearing mascara on her face. A pathetic sight. Not long ago I would have been touched and rushed to comfort her. But now I didn't care. "Forgive me," she wept. "I didn't want it to turn out this way. It's just that with Marcus everything was different. He understood me, supported me, and you were constantly at work. I felt so lonely." "And so you decided to jump into his bed?" I laughed bitterly. "Well, what a caring wife I have. As soon as I turned away, you immediately found comfort in someone else's arms." "No, it's not like that. There was nothing between us until you went to prison. It's just, the accident changed everything. I was depressed, scared. I didn't know what to do. And Marcus supported me, helped me through all this horror." I suddenly felt the ground slipping from under my feet. So the suspicions turned out to be true. They really staged the accident to get rid of me. The world swam before my eyes. Nausea rose in my throat. "Realized you said too much, huh?" I hissed. "Well, go on. Tell me how you and Marcus decided to play out this spectacle. How he ruined my brakes so I'd crash into that unfortunate Fiat. How you acted the inconsolable wife who can't live without her husband. Only now I understand that you just couldn't wait to get rid of me." "No, Eric, I swear I didn't plan anything like that," Nicole cried out. "Yes, Marcus and I love each other, but I would never do such a thing. I couldn't hurt you." "Lies!" I roared, jumping to my feet. "You're lying through your teeth. You think I can't see how you're squirming and making excuses? Didn't plan anything, my ass. And Marcus, I suppose, came up with everything by himself. Decided out of the kindness of his heart to get rid of me so you could peace? Nicole shrank into the chair, looking at me in fright. Her face was covered in red splotches, her eyes puffy from tears. A pitiful sight. "Please don't," she whispered imploringly. "Let's talk calmly. I'll explain everything." "I don't need your explanations," I growled, looming over her. "I want to know only one thing. Whose idea was it? Yours or Marcus's? Which one of you suggested getting rid of me?" "But don't you see?" Nicole sobbed, but I wasn't listening anymore. I grabbed her by the shoulders and started shaking her like a rag doll. "Talk!" I yelled, spitting saliva. "Whose idea was it? Answer me, you—" "Mine!" she suddenly screamed, looking at me in fear. "Mine! Do you hear? It was my idea. I didn't want to kill you, just stage an accident so you'd go away for a long time. And then Marcus and I could be together. I was so tired of this life I couldn't pretend to be a loving wife anymore." Her words reached me as if through cotton wool. My ears were ringing. Everything was swimming before my eyes. I unclenched my hands and Nicole collapsed back into the chair, whimpering softly. "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out of here before I do something I'll regret." Nicole jumped to her feet and darted for the exit. At the door itself, she turned around, looking at me imploringly. "Eric, please. Don't do anything stupid. I still love you. We can fix everything," I yelled, throwing a pillow from the couch at her. Nicole squealed and disappeared behind the door. I collapsed back onto the couch, feeling myself shaking with violent tremors. I couldn't even believe this was happening for real. My beloved wife had just confessed that she wanted to put me behind bars, that our entire marriage was a sham, that she didn't love me one bit. I sat there staring at one spot, trying to process this information in my head. I wanted to scream, to smash things, to tear my hair out, but I just sat there as if paralyzed, unable to move. How long I sat like that, an hour, two, a day, I don't know. At some point I just passed out, and when I came to, the room was dark and quiet. I didn't immediately understand where I was and what had happened. And then the memories came flooding back, and it was as if I had been doused with ice water. Nicole, betrayal, the confession I had recorded on the voice recorder. Wait, the voice recorder. I jumped up, rummaged through my pockets. The device was found in the inner pocket of my jacket. Small and inconspicuous, it held terrible secrets. With shaking hands, I rewound the recording to the beginning and pressed play. From the speakers came Nicole's hysterical voice, begging me not to do anything stupid, then mine, breaking into a scream, and most importantly, her heartfelt confession, how she had planned to get rid of me, how Marcus had helped with that, and how she was tired of pretending to be a loving wife. I had irrefutable proof in my hands. Now no one would dare accuse me of slander or paranoia. I had a trump card that would allow me to put this couple behind bars for many years. Oh, I would make sure they were punished to the fullest, just as I was punished once. I knew I had to act fast. First thing, a call to the police. I couldn't let Nicole run away or try to paint me as a madman. She would answer for everything. They would both answer. With those thoughts, I dialed 911. The beep seemed endlessly long to me, but then a woman's voice sounded in the receiver. "Emergency services, what happened?" "My name is Eric Foster," I said clearly. "I want to report an attempted murder. I have evidence against my wife, Nicole Foster, and her lover, Marcus Greenberg. They tried to kill me." Further events developed rapidly. The police arrived surprisingly quickly. Two grim-looking officers came up to the apartment and started asking questions. I briefly outlined the situation, keeping quiet for now about the main thing, the audio recording of Nicole's confession. I decided to save this information for a more serious conversation. The cops looked skeptical. No wonder. Who knows who writes statements against whom? Husbands often accuse wives of all mortal sins, especially out of jealousy. But I wasn't about to give up. "I have evidence," I said firmly, pulling out the voice recorder. "A recording where my wife admits to deliberately staging an accident involving me. I can provide this evidence." The officers exchanged glances. The older one, with a typical Irish appearance, red-haired and freckled, held out his hand for the recorder. "Well, let's hear what you have there, Mr. Foster." We settled in the living room. I pressed play, and the room was filled with Nicole's frantic voice, her sobs, pleas, confused explanations, and the culmination of it all, A terrible confession that the idea to stage the accident was hers, that she wanted to get rid of me. The cops listened without interrupting. They only frowned harder and occasionally cast sidelong glances at me. When the recording ended, the freckled one took a deep breath and scratched the back of his head. Well, what a mess. As I understand it, we're talking about an accident 3 years ago? The one you were in jail for? I nodded. Exactly. Back then I was accused of attempted murder, but now, as you can see, new circumstances have come to light. Well, this changes the case fundamentally, the officer said thoughtfully. I'm afraid, however, that proving intent will not be easy. Too much time has passed. And your recording, it's good if it's admitted in court. Your wife's lawyers may insist that you staged everything yourself. I felt everything go cold inside. Was it another dead end? Would Nicole get away with it this time too? No, I won't allow it. But you can arrest her, can't you? I asked insistently. Take her into custody as a suspect? You have grounds, don't you? The officers exchanged glances again. We can take her in, drawled the freckled one. But we won't be able to hold her for long. A day at most, then we'll have to let her go. Unless we find more evidence or witnesses. Witnesses? I perked up. Actually, there is one person, my friend Carl Abbott. He's the one who told me about Nicole and Marcus's affair. He had some kind of messages. Photos. Well, this person should also be questioned. The cop nodded, making a note in his notebook. Give us his contacts. We'll deal with him. And don't take any action for now, Mr. Foster. The situation is more than delicate. Leave it all to the professionals. They left, taking the voice recorder and my statement with them. I was left alone, nervously pacing the room. The uncertainty was killing me. I was afraid to believe that everything could end well, that the traitors would get what they deserved, and I could start all over again. An hour passed, then another. I couldn't find a place for myself. I even poured myself some whiskey, although I hardly ever drank. To hell with it today I could, just to stop this shaking. The doorbell rang when I was finishing my second glass. My heart sank. Was it the police? So fast? But it was Carl who stood on the doorstep, pale, disheveled, with a strange glint in his eyes. He pushed me away and burst into the apartment without even waiting for an invitation. What the hell, Eric? He attacked me right away. What kind of circus have you arranged? I just got a call from the police asking about Nicole and Marcus, asking about some photos and messages. Have you completely lost your mind? I was taken aback. I had never seen Carl like this before. Even in a drunken stupor, he never allowed himself to raise his voice at me. Calm down, I said in a conciliatory tone, trying to stop my voice from shaking. Sit down. I'll explain everything now. No, explain it right away, Carl barked, grabbing me by the collar. What did you tell them? Why did you drag me into this? But don't you see, I exploded, pushing him away. I have evidence against Nicole and Marcus, a recording where she confesses everything. About the affair, about the accident they set up for me. Now those bastards will answer for everything. Carl froze, breathing heavily. A strange expression flashed in his eyes, whether it was fright or pity, and then he suddenly burst out laughing, dryly, unpleasantly, almost hysterically. Evidence? Do you even hear yourself? What fucking evidence? He made a recording. Look at that. What? You don't believe me? I was taken aback. But you said yourself. What did I say? Carl asked mockingly. Oh yeah, about Nicole and Marcus's affair? So it was a joke, you idiot, a prank. Well, I made it up to piss you off. And you fell for it. The ground slipped from under my feet. A joke? A prank? This can't be. But you showed photos, I stammered. Some messages. Photoshop, Carl snapped. Don't you know what that is? Or do you seriously believe that I had their love correspondence? God, Eric, I didn't even think you were such a moron. I was paralyzed. My thoughts were scattered, refusing to form a coherent picture. If Carl was lying, if there was no affair, then it turns out. Suddenly the phone rang. Carl put the receiver to his ear, listening to the invisible interlocutor. Then he slowly lowered the phone and stared at me with wide eyes. You've done it now, he hissed. Nicole and Marcus have just been arrested. Subsequent events merged into one blurry whirlwind for me. The police station, endless interrogations, confrontations. I felt stunned, lost. I couldn't believe that my best friend had set me up so cruelly. There was no longer any doubt that Nicole and Marcus were not involved in the accident. Their alibi was confirmed, Witnesses gave statements. And Marcus himself, broken, crushed, threw at me in a fit of anger during one of the interrogations. There was nothing between me and Nicole. No affair, no plans, nothing. We're just friends. I wanted to support her while you were in jail. That's all. And you just want to blame everything on others, just so you don't have to admit that you're to blame for everything yourself. I sat there as if spat upon. Did I really make it all up? Got myself worked up, fell for an idiotic prank. Because I couldn't come to terms with my own guilt. I wanted to find someone to blame? The detective looked at me with undisguised contempt. No wonder they had spent so much effort on the investigation, and it turned out to be a sham. A false accusation, slander. Now I myself was facing serious problems with the law. I trudged home in complete prostration. I wanted only one thing: to get drunk to unconsciousness, to forget about everything. But as soon as I opened the door, I froze on the threshold. The apartment was a mess, as if a herd of elephants had run through it. Furniture overturned, things scattered, and on the floor in the living room lay a man, face down, in a pool of blood. My heart sank. I ran over, turned him over, fearing the worst. But it wasn't Carl, as I thought at first. It was Marcus. He was breathing hoarsely with a wheeze, blood running down his chin. But he was alive. What? What happened? Was all I could squeeze out. Marcus opened his bleary eyes, swallowed convulsively, and wheezed. Carl, it was him. Wanted to kill me. Because of you. Because of your games. I went cold. Carl? My friend Carl is a murderer? This can't be. It just can't be, that's all. He said he had to fix what he'd done, that he didn't want it to turn out this way. He was talking some nonsense. Each word was difficult for Marcus. I stupidly watched as bloody foam broke from his lips. The snatches of phrases formed a monstrous picture. It turned out that the accident 3 years ago was not an accident after all. It was indeed staged, only not by Nicole and Marcus, but by Carl. It was he who ruined my breaks that morning. He was jealous, afraid of losing a friend, angry at Nicole. So he decided to get rid of her with my hands. He thought I would go to jail, and then he and I would be inseparable again. Only he didn't count on Nicole waiting for me. And then, when I got out and started openly drinking myself to death, Carl got scared, realized what he had done. So he decided to shift the blame to Nicole and Marcus, made up a story about an affair, faked a lot of evidence, and fed it to me, knowing how suspicious and paranoid I was after everything. He's a psycho, Eric. A complete psycho, Marcus wheezed, clinging to my arm. Obsessed. You're like an obsession to him. He says you're his only, no one else's. We need to turn him in, to a mental hospital, or better yet, behind bars. I listened as if in a fog. My thoughts were confused. The world was swimming before my eyes. I wanted to scream, howl with horror and incomprehension. Was Carl really capable of this? Did I not notice all these years what kind of monster I was friends with? There was a pounding on the door. I flinched but didn't move. Marcus went limp on the floor, losing consciousness. The locks crunched pitifully, and the police burst into the apartment. Then everything rushed by like in fast motion. The wail of sirens, commotion, paramedics, stretchers. I was pushed aside. They started asking me questions. I answered automatically, not understanding what I was saying. Are you all right, Mr. Foster? Do you need help? The detective's weary voice snapped me out of my stupor. I shook my head, trying to focus my gaze. Carl! Where's Carl? Did you find him? The cop frowned and looked away. From his face, I realized, no, they didn't find him. We've combed the entire area, raised patrols, but so far without result. This Carl of yours has vanished into thin air. I swallowed the viscous saliva. So he's on the loose, wandering somewhere, making new crazy plans. And I'm even afraid to imagine what kind. We managed to hack his email, the detective continued. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. It looks like you're right, Mr. Foster. Carl Abbott is mentally unstable and obsessed with you, apparently for a long time. I closed my eyes, exhaled convulsively, fighting the rising nausea. It didn't make sense. All this time, my closest friend was my secret enemy, destroying my life on the sly, methodically, systematically. And I, a fool, didn't notice anything. We'll find him, Eric, the detective said softly, touching my shoulder. I promise, he'll answer for everything. For you, for Marcus, for what he tried to do to your wife. He won't get away. We'll find him, Eric, the detective said softly, touching my shoulder. I promise he'll answer for everything. For you, for Marcus, for what he tried to do to your wife. He won't get away. You'll catch him all right, I thought bitterly. But what's the use? No one will give me back those 3 years, and my faith in people too. The police left, taking Marcus to the hospital. The apartment emptied. I wandered through the rooms like a ghost, not knowing what to do with myself. I felt empty and vile inside, so I had no more friends. My wife had left. I had lost my job long ago, and I never had any faith in the future to begin with. Suddenly my gaze fell on the bookshelf. There, behind King's volumes, was an old, trusty revolver, still from my father's army days. It's unclear how it survived all the searches. I took it out, turned it over in my hands. Heavy, cold, reliable. With it, you can solve all problems in one fell swoop, simply and quickly. And damn me if I know what stopped me. Cowardice? The desire to spite Carl one last time? I don't know. One way or another, I put the gun aside and reached for the phone. The beeps went on for a long time. Finally, a hoarse voice sounded in the receiver. My heart clenched. Nicole? I blurted out, afraid to change my mind. It's me. I'm sorry it's so late. No, nothing happened. I mean, something happened, but… Listen, we need to see each other. Urgently. We need to talk. There was a ringing pause. I was already preparing to hear the beeps, but Nicole suddenly said quietly, All right, Eric, come over. I'll be waiting. I swallowed. My hand was shaking so much that the phone almost fell out. Thank you. I'm leaving now. I hope it's not too late for everything. For us and for Carl, I mentally added, dropping the phone. For the first time in a long time, I felt a little better. Maybe there was still a chance to fix everything. At least it was worth a try. With those thoughts, I threw on my jacket and walked out the door. Towards a new life, whatever it might be.